What's up guys, Mike here, the Detroit Borg, and today we're checking out the brand new 21.5-inch iMac with a Retina 4K display. Now all the 21.5-inch iMacs have been updated, the Retina and non-Retina models. So we get Broadwell processors, Thunderbolt 2, faster RAM, and new graphics processors. But in this video, we're going to take a look at the Retina 4K display, which starts off at $14.99. That gets you a 3.1 GHz quad-core Intel Core i5 processor. Again, that's Broadwell. 8 gigs of RAM is standard, but you can configure this up to 16 gigs, and you cannot upgrade this yourself, so you want to do it when you order your iMac. It also comes standard with Intel's Iris Pro Graphics 6200 GPU, which is integrated, so no more dedicated GPU for this iMac. And it also comes standard with a 1TB 5400 RPM hard disk drive. So that's kind of a slow drive, and I would highly recommend upgrading to the 1TB Fusion drive, which is only $100 more. That adds a 24 gig SSD in addition to the 1TB of hard disk storage, which is used for booting the system and apps, which significantly improves speed. So getting to the unboxing, they make this very simple. All we have to do is pull a tab along the top to allow us to open up the box, which flips forward. And inside we'll find our nicely cocooned iMac just covered in tons of styrofoam. First thing we want to do is pull out the accessory packet. So inside our accessory box we'll find all of our new Magic accessories, which includes the new Magic keyboard and the new Magic mouse too. You can also replace or add the Magic trackpad too. Now I've already covered those accessories in detail in previous videos, which I'll leave linked in the description below. So of course we have our Magic keyboard wrapped in this sort of frosted plastic. It's nice, lightweight, and ultra thin. It also has an internal rechargeable battery, so we no longer need to replace the batteries like we had to with the previous generation. We also have our Magic mouse too, which again has an internal rechargeable battery and is charged via a lightning connector. Of course we also get a lightning cable for recharging those accessories, so again all you have to do is connect your accessories to your iMac and it'll charge it for you. We also have our literature packet, which includes a quick start guide, some warranty information, and a set of Apple stickers. We also get a microfiber cleaning cloth for cleaning the glass display. Now, interestingly, this is no longer Apple branded as it usually has been in the past. So getting to the Mac, it's actually fairly lightweight. It only weighs 12 pounds, so I can easily pick up this package and remove it so we can get the box out of the way. Once we have the iMac on our desk, we can go ahead and remove all these styrofoam pieces. Now, inside one of those styrofoam pieces is the power cord. So all I have to do is remove the plastic, pull it out, and we'll set this aside until we're ready to plug it in. Of course, like all iMacs, it's covered once again in this sort of styrofoam envelope, which we have to peel off. So all we have to do is peel off the flaps along the back side and pull up to set it aside. But wait, there's more. So of course we have plastic covering the pedestal, so what we have to do is peel it off and lift it up so we can get it off entirely. And then we have plastic surrounding the bezel and the front glass. So I'm just going to go ahead and peel off the edges here, and once I've done that, the plastic sheet comes off neatly. Now in terms of the design, it's pretty much unchanged from the previous generation, which is just fine. It's a really nice looking all-in-one computer with this all aluminum shell with this razor thin edge. Now of course it bows out toward the center to accommodate all the internals of the computer. So along the back we'll find this pivoting aluminum stand, and it's not spring loaded like it is on the much heavier 27-inch iMac. Of course, we also have this black Apple logo in the back, which is actually part of the radio system here. So we need some transparency through this aluminum for Wi-Fi to work through this computer, and the Apple logo serves that purpose. Also at the center toward the top, we'll find a set of dual microphones. So again, one faces toward the back and one faces toward the top, and it's etched into the metal and is nearly invisible. Now taking a look at our I/O, it basically looks the same, but it has been upgraded here. So we now have Thunderbolt 2 in addition to 4 USB 3.0 ports, a gigabit Ethernet port, in addition to an SD/XC card slot, and of course a headphone jack, which does integrate optical output if you have a compatible cable. And along the left side, you'll find your concaved metal power button, which has a really satisfying click to it. Also hidden behind the stand is the single fanned exhaust vent, so it keeps the computer very quiet. And of course, toward the center, we get our power port in addition to a Kensington lock just below it. So if you want to securely fasten your Mac to your desk so it doesn't walk away, you can do that with this accessory. So while we're back here, let's go ahead and connect our power cable. So the power cable itself is angled slightly, so it works with the pivot of the stand, and it fits nice and flush. So flipping to the front, let's go ahead and hit that power button to get it booted up for the first time so we can take a look at that really sharp 4K display. So once again, the display is covered edge to edge in this glass panel, which has an anti-reflective coating, which is a bit better than the previous generation. In fact, if you look at them side by side, again, you can see the tint here is much darker on the 21.5-inch iMac with a 4K Retina display than the non-Retina model from the previous generation. But of course, this is still a glossy display, so you'll still see some of that reflectivity. Toward the top edge, you'll find your FaceTime HD camera, good for 720p video. It's basically the same camera from the previous generation. We also have an ambient light sensor and an LED indicator letting us know when the camera is active. Now toward the bottom we'll find our classic iMac chin, and of course we'll find our Apple logo toward the center. But if you look down below, you can see that Razer Edge incorporates the stereo speakers and the ventilation. It's a really nice design, even though most people won't even see it. And the speakers themselves sound really good. It's actually kind of surprising. You have a good amount of bass and dynamic range, so they sound nice and clear. And I find I really don't need to add external speakers with these. I'm pretty satisfied with them overall. Now carefully laying our iMac down flat, we can take a look at the underside of the pedestal, which is wrapped in this sort of plastic foot, which allows the iMac to move freely across the surface without scratching anything. And of course, all of our regulatory labeling is hidden down here in addition to our serial number. Now getting to the most important part of this review, the display. So once again, we have a 21.5-inch 4K Retina display, but that actually means this has a resolution of 4096 by 2304. That's actually greater than standard 4K, which also means it's using a custom timing controller, the same one used in the 5K iMac. That means this cannot be used for target display mode because it's higher resolution than standard 4K, and the current Apple hardware can't support this resolution over a single cable. But this is a huge improvement over the 1080p display. So if you look at them side by side, you can see just how much clearer the 4K Retina display is compared to the 1080p of the previous generation. But the other big story here is the color gamut. So both the 27-inch and 21.5-inch have new backlights, which significantly widens the color gamut of both displays, so colors are much more vivid. In order to achieve this, Apple has switched away from standard white LEDs for backlighting and is now using red-green phosphor LEDs, which expands the color gamut. Now Apple is actually calling this a P3 display. That's actually a technology used for digital movie theaters. So that means this display is capable of displaying more shades of red or green. Now checking out the performance of this new iMac, on Geekbench we see a single core score of 3713, a multi-core score of around 12,500. Now if we compare this to the original, or the last time I reviewed the 21.5-inch iMac when it got this super thin design, you can see it's a pretty significant jump. We go from 3,000 to 3,700 and 9,000 to almost 12,500. Now in terms of graphics performance, this is where things get interesting. Remember, we now have integrated graphics instead of dedicated graphics. So with Cinebench, we can see our OpenGL score was around 46 frames per second, and our CPU score was a little south of 600. But if we look at the 2012 iMac with dedicated graphics, we're seeing a slight gain here. Generally speaking, the graphics performance of the integrated graphics is pretty much identical to the performance of the dedicated graphics on the previous systems. Now the real impediment for this computer is the standard hard disk drive. So if we look at the speed of the disk, you can see the read and write speed are really low. Now if you compare this to more modern Macs like the 15-inch MacBook Pro, that computer has a read speed of around 2,000 megs and a write speed of around 1,200. That makes a huge difference in terms of performance. So you spend a lot more time watching your icons bounce on the dock as they load. And it also means you spend a lot more time looking at the spinning beach ball. But once again, if you get that 1TB Fusion drive, that speed bottleneck goes away. Now there is a lot to like about this iMac with a 21.5-inch 4K display that's crisp and clear with bright, vivid colors. It's a fantastic display to spend a lot of time behind, especially if you're reading text, looking at photographs, or watching video. And now you can watch full 4K video from YouTube or any streaming service, or if you're a video editor and you want to edit 4K video, you can actually see it on your 4K display. Now ultimately, I think you have to be really careful about the pricing here. At $1,499, you're only $300 away from the base 27-inch iMac with a 5K Retina display, which gets you discrete graphics in addition to Skylake processors. And of course, an even larger display with more resolution to work with. So you really have to want this smaller form factor. And once you add a 1TB Fusion drive, which I highly recommend, I actually think it's a must here, you get even closer to that baseline 27-inch iMac. But I think it's quite clear that like the 27-inch iMac, this Retina display will be dispersed across the entire lineup, so it should be a lot cheaper within a year. But what do you guys think? Would you prefer the 21.5-inch 4K iMac or the 27-inch 5K iMac for only $200 more? Let me know in the comment section below. So that's going to do it for me in this video, guys. Hope you enjoyed it. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you again. What's up guys, Mike here, the Detroit Borg, checking out the new Magic Keyboard, which is launching alongside the new Magic Mouse 2 and the new Trackpad 2, which I'll cover in separate videos. But of course this comes included with all the new 2015 iMacs as well, but you can also purchase this separately for $99. Now this is the first complete redesign of the wireless keyboard since the 2007 model, which we've had for a long time here. And of course, like a lot of new Apple products, it's thinner and lighter than the previous generation. So getting to the unboxing, first thing we need to do here is peel off all the plastic plastic. Once we do that, we can slide off the sleeve, and inside we'll find our new keyboard. The first thing that jumps out right away are these larger keys, which fill up the very compact design of the new keyboard. Lifting that up, the next thing we'll find is just how much lighter and thinner the new keyboard is. It's wrapped in this sort of frosted plastic, and we can peel that off to reveal the keyboard. Now, this is substantially lighter than the previous generation. We go from 11.5 ounces to 8.2 ounces, which makes this a great portable solution for iPad users. Now, it's still a Bluetooth keyboard, and it's compatible with OS 10.11 or newer. Now, before we take a close look, let's get to the accessories. And the first thing that jumps out right away is a lightning cable. And that's because this has an internal rechargeable lithium-ion battery. So we no longer need to remove the batteries and recharge them or replace them. So you can basically just connect this to a USB port on your computer to recharge it, which I think is very handy. Of course, we also get some paperwork with a quick start guide and some regulatory and warranty information. Taking a close look at the design of the Magic Keyboard, very familiar for Apple. We have these white keys along with this metal frame. The keys themselves are wider and shallower than before and use a new scissor mechanism, which Apple says is 33% more stable than the previous generation. We also get a much lighter font with some new iconography, which generally looks a little bit brighter and more contemporary than the previous generation, but also makes it a little less visible in the dark. Unfortunately, it is not backlit, which would be nice in this scenario, especially since it's now really easy to recharge it. Speaking of recharging, if you look along the back edge, you'll find your lightning connector for recharging the internal battery. It takes about 2 hours to fully charge it, but just a few minutes of charging will give you a few hours of use, and of course you can charge this and use it at the same time. We also have a power switch in the upper right. There is no LED indicator telling us when it's on or off, but of course we have this bright indicator on the switch itself. Along the left edge, you'll find this white trim piece, and that's part of the Bluetooth antenna system. So it needs some transparency in order for the antenna to work through the metal chassis of the keyboard, so they give you this little window. This is very similar to the design of the previous keyboard. The back of the keyboard is very simple here. We have this glossy plastic with the Apple logo toward the center, and at each corner we'll find these rubber feet for gripping your table. The pairing process is very simple here. Of course, we can do the standard Bluetooth pairing. All we have to do is turn on our keyboard, go to our settings, find our Bluetooth controller, and find our keyboard, which we can click on and pair to easily. But you can also quickly pair your keyboard using a lightning connector connected to your Mac. So as soon as you plug your keyboard into your Mac using that lightning connector, it pairs and you're good to go. And you can go ahead and disconnect the cable. So it's almost instantaneous. Now, compared to the previous generation, the first thing that jumps out right away is just, again, how much wider the keys, how much lighter the font is, and how much thicker the top row is. So without the bulky battery compartment from the previous generation, you can see they gave us a lot more room for those keys along the top. So the keyboard is so much more compact than the previous generation. You can actually tuck it underneath the wedge of the previous keyboard. We can also see some other changes here. So for example, our left and right keys are larger than the previous generation. A lot of people don't like this, but of course it does look a little more uniform. We also get a backlit caps lock key. Now this only works if the keyboard is paired to a computer, so it won't unintentionally activate if you're traveling around with this keyboard and it's still on. Now we have the same function keys along the top. They've just been redesigned and spaced out differently here. So we now have a larger escape key, but we still have our screen brightness controls in addition to mission control and the launcher key. We also have our media controls, so back, forward, play, pause, etc. And then we have our volume keys for mute, volume up, and volume down. And far toward the right, we still get an eject button. Now the keyboard is the same width as the previous generation. It's just not as tall because we don't have the battery compartment, and of course it's much thinner and lighter. The keys are actually bigger, so in many ways the keyboard feels more spacious than the previous generation. There's more surface area for the keys and less blank space between them. So when you strike the keys, you get a more satisfying feel than the previous generation. Again, they say that these keys are 33% more stable than the previous generation, which means the keys don't sort of wobble around. Instead, you get this more satisfying click. Now, the key mechanism is different than the one used in the MacBook. That uses a butterfly mechanism and a dome switch. This still uses a scissor mechanism, but it's lower profile and a bit more stable. So the technology is different and it does feel different, but the overall effect is somewhat similar. We have a more solid, more consistent feel across the entire keyboard. The keys are also slightly cupped here, so they contour to your fingers, which feels a little more natural and more similar to the previous keyboard than the new MacBook keyboard. And I really like how fast this keyboard is. There's less mechanical action because there's less travel in the keys, so I can really fly across this keyboard, especially since I really type fast. And generally speaking, I just like how much more solid this keyboard feels. The keys are much more stable, they click into place more easily, and I just like the sound better than the previous keyboard. And I'm also glad that the keyboard finally has an internal battery, which is rechargeable thanks to a lightning connector, which is very convenient since I think most people have a lightning connector already connected to their iMac. That means I don't have to keep a set of batteries around. I always have a lightning cable to recharge my iPhone, which I can then use to recharge my keyboard. But of course, I shouldn't have to do that too often because a charge should last a month or better. Now personally, I prefer a backlit keyboard, so I'm disappointed that they chose not to add it, especially since it's much easier now to recharge the internal battery of the keyboard. So I've been using a Logitech K811, which I reviewed many years ago. I really like it because again, it's a nice compact Bluetooth keyboard that has this backlighting, which I find very useful. Alright guys, so that's going to do it for me in this video. If you want to check out my other videos on the Magic products, I'll leave them linked in the description below. I hope you guys enjoyed it. If you did, please give it a thumbs up to let me know, and I'll see you again in the next one. What's up guys, Mike here, the Detroit Borg, and today we're checking out the new Apple Magic Trackpad 2. So this is one of 3 new Magic accessories launching alongside the new 2015 iMacs. So the Magic Trackpad 2 joins the new Magic Keyboard and the Magic Mouse 2, but this is by far the most expensive of the new accessories at $129. The keyboard is $99 and the Magic Mouse 2 is $79. So before we explain why the Trackpad 2 is so much more expensive, let's get to the unboxing. So first thing we have to do here is remove the shrink wrap plastic. Once we do that, we can go ahead and slide the sleeve off the box. So the first thing that jumps out right away is how much wider this trackpad is from the previous generation. It's also 29% larger in terms of the surface area, and it's white instead of gray or aluminum colored. So lifting the trackpad out of the box, you can see it's wrapped in this sort of frosted plastic, which we can go ahead and peel off. Now the design very closely matches that of the new Magic Keyboard. We have this nice wedge shape, and the white sort of matches the keys of the new Magic Keyboard. So the trackpad once again has this sort of silky, glassy texture on the surface. I really like the way it feels. It pretty much feels identical to every other Apple trackpad you've probably handled before. Along the side, you can see we have this nice thin wedge shape, and it's wrapped in aluminum. Along the back, you can see we have a design very similar to the Magic Keyboard. We have our power switch on the right side. There is no LED indicator indicating when it's turned on or not, just a bright indicator on the switch itself. We also have a lightning connector, and that's because we have an internal battery this time. So we don't have to swap out the batteries anymore. You can charge this via a lightning port, and you can connect it right to your Mac and charge it even while you're using it. So it takes about 2 hours to fully charge, but you can get at least 9 hours from a 2 to 5 minute charge. But once it's fully charged, the trackpad should last at least a month on a charge, if not more. And just like the Magic Keyboard, we have an antenna strip along the back. This allows the Bluetooth antennas to work through the metal frame. Along the bottom, just like on the keyboard, we have this glossy plastic surface with the Apple logo toward the center. And in each corner, we have these rubber feet, which stabilize the trackpad on your surfaces. Now, before we get to pairing and using the new trackpad, let's get to the accessories. So, of course, we have a lightning cable, which is neatly packaged here. Again, we can use this to recharge the battery internally. We also get some paperwork with a quick start guide, regulatory information, and our warranty card. Now, once again, we have 2 options for pairing our new trackpad. We can do the standard Bluetooth method, so all we have to do is go to our Bluetooth control panel, look for our new trackpad 2, connect it, pair it, and you're good to go. Alternatively, you can just connect a lightning cable connected to your Mac right to the trackpad, and it sets up the pairing automatically. You don't have to do anything. This is a really handy way of automatically pairing your trackpad without having to dig through the menus, especially if you don't have a mouse connected to the computer already. So once we're paired, we're good to go, and you can disconnect the cable or leave it connected if you want. It still works through Bluetooth whether the cable is connected or not. So what exactly makes the new Trackpad 2 so expensive? Well, it starts with Force Touch. So the same technology that has been added to the MacBook Pros and the new MacBooks now makes it to the desktop thanks to this accessory. So that means we no longer have a full physical click in this trackpad. It's now replicated via a Taptic engine. So there's actually a motor or electric motor underneath the surface of the trackpad that simulates a physical click. This also makes the Trackpad 2 pressure sensitive. So this works with a new gesture within OS X called force clicking. Now the unusual thing about Force Touch is that it's completely indistinguishable from a physical click, even though nothing is actually clicking on the trackpad. In fact, if you turn the trackpad off, that force clicking completely goes away. So as soon as you turn it on, you get both the auditory feedback from the click as well as the physical sensation of clicking. Now if you look along the edges of the trackpad, you can see it kind of floats here, and that's because there are force sensors under the glass panel, which needs some movement in order to determine the amount of pressure you're applying to it. So you can actually see that moving when you press harder on the trackpad. Now, force clicking introduces a new way of interacting with OS X, and force clicking happens when you press harder through a click. So you have the initial click, and then you press harder to get to a force click. So for example, you can force click on a word which brings up lookup. So this will bring up a variety of contextually aware items, so a definition, a map, an address book, or even a Wikipedia article. So one of my favorite uses for force clicking allows you to preview websites. So for example, if you're reading an article, you see some links, you force click on them, you can take a brief look at that web page, you can scroll through it, and then dismiss it and go back to what you were doing. Now effectively, this is the same trackpad that's available on the MacBooks. We even have the same settings panel. So you can change the scroll direction from natural to traditional. You can zoom in or out just by pinching in and out to zoom. You also have smart zoom, so you can just use 2 fingers, so double tap with 2 fingers to zoom in and out. You can also rotate by twisting your fingers. We have gestures like swipe between pages, swipe between full screen apps. We have our notification center, which you can evoke by swiping in from the edge of the trackpad. We have mission control, which you can bring up by swiping up with 3 fingers. We can also activate app expose by swiping down with 3 fingers. You can also invoke the launchpad by pinching in with your thumb and 3 fingers. And you can also quickly show your desktop by spreading with your thumb and 3 fingers. In terms of point and click, we have lookup and data detector. So you can choose this with a force click, or you can use tap with 3 fingers to achieve the same thing. We also have secondary click, so you can enable that. That's off by default. And you can also enable tap to click. Now you can change the intensity of the click, so you can go for a lighter click, a medium click, or a firm click if you want something less sensitive, and you can also change your tracking speed. We can also enable silent clicking. So if you want the sensation of a physical click, but you want it to be quieter, you can enable this. And if you want, you can completely turn off force clicking and the haptic feedback. Now compared to the previous generation, obviously there's a pretty big change in form factor. It's quite a bit bigger, quite a bit wider. Of course, you have an internal battery instead of the battery compartment, which meant you had to swap out the batteries anytime they ran out. Now the big change here is that we no longer have a physical click. The previous generation's click was actually built into the feet of the trackpad, which means it had to be on a hard surface in order for the physical click to work. And since the clicking mechanism was hinged toward the bottom on the old trackpad, that means the click was stiffer toward the top than the bottom. But of course, with the new trackpad, it doesn't matter where you click on it, you get the same feedback. So ultimately, in the end, this is by far the largest trackpad in Apple's lineup. So if you like a lot of surface area, especially with a large display, so if you have a large display for a 27-inch iMac, or even bigger if you have an attached display, this larger surface area for moving across the screen real estate could definitely benefit you over the more cramped, smaller square shape from the previous generation. And of course, the trackpad gives you access to a lot of unique OS X features that are not available with a standard mouse, either the Magic Mouse 2 or an attached third-party mouse. Now personally, what I like to do is leave a trackpad connected for day-to-day tasks, which gives me access to all those unique OS X gestures. But when I need something more substantial for video editing, I'll jump right back to my Logitech MX Master. Alright guys, so what do you think? Are you a trackpad person or a mouse person? Let me know in the comment section below. I hope you guys stay tuned for my 21.5-inch 4K iMac review coming up pretty shortly. If you guys like this video, please give it a thumbs up to let me know, and I'll see you again in the next one.